Hey guys, Alex here from SPP, and today I'm joined by my colleague Dian,
Hi everyone.
as well as Brendan Tully from WPSpeedfix.com to tell us more about his business and how SPP has benefited him so far.
Hey guys, good to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Nice having you.
My pleasure.
So, Brendan, you formed a really successful website optimization business. Could you tell us a little bit about how you found your way into this business, how you managed to find this issue in the first place regarding WordPress instances? And I guess you didn't find them fast enough, so you decided to fix
Sure.
that.
So we have an SEO agency we've had or search agency, more accurately, since 2008. And I guess we've been doing speed stuff since we used to do web design stuff. We don't do web design stuff anymore in the agency. And the first few websites that we designed, they didn't have hosting. So we put them on a Bluehost account and stacked a whole bunch of sites in there and charged them for hosting. So after a while, that was like when Bluehost was a good host, like 2010 or something like that. And after a while, some of them started complaining that their sites were offline a lot. And then we realized Bluehost wasn't very good. That was probably 2011, something like that. So we kind of fell into like doing speed optimization or, making the sites faster and more stable, not even speed optimization. And that was around the time WP Engine was a brand new business and there was no managed WordPress host. I think they were probably the first one. So we stuck them all on WP Engine. That was 2011, 2012, and that was probably like 20 or 30 sites by that stage. And some of them we were doing active SEO for and managing on an ongoing basis. And we saw the rankings move up, like all of them, they started ranking better. And there's a pretty clear correlation between speed and rankings. So over time, we kind of made this rule in the SEO agency that if we were doing SEO for you, then you'd be on our hosting. And part of that was because in that kind of, a lot of those are local businesses. So if something went wrong on the website, they would call us anyway, even if it was a hosting problem. So we're kind of like, if we're going to be responsible for the hosting, we might as well charge for it. So we started doing hosting stuff and speed optimization as part of that, just to make the sites fast. And then we started doing just speed optimization just as a standalone service, and wrote some content on it and just started getting inquiries for it, like 2015, 2016. So we ended up splitting that out into its own brand, WP Speedfix, at some point in 2016, and it's kind of just grown from there bit by bit. Slow websites are a huge problem. People on bad hosts and just not well configured or not well put together. And now Google basically have told everybody that they need to have a fast website, and they throw a bunch of errors and warnings in their face if they fail the Google Core Web Vitals test. So it's great for us. Google basically said you need to have a fast website, and I think we rank the position 1 or 2 for WordPress speed optimization and a bunch of search terms like that. So we're like, someone gets, the day of the month Google sends all the Google Search Console warnings is when we get a whole bunch of leads, because people get all these warnings about site speed and stuff. So that's how it started. So it's kind of like this sideline, a blog post that turned into this full-fledged business. So yeah.
Sounds great. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's interesting that you were there at the right time, but you also really noticed that people have an actual issue. So the slow website doesn't just annoy users. It actually can impact the conversion rate and everything, because there's so many studies. How much time do you think is enough to spend on a website? If you're sitting there and it doesn't load in 10 seconds, then you're like, okay, maybe something's wrong. I'll just leave.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we've been lucky, and it's kind of like something that it's just grown by itself, grown organically. It's such a problem people have. I mean, there's millions of websites out there, and there's a lot of bad hosts as well. So that works well for us.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for such a detailed answer. Really appreciate it. To follow up, I wanted to ask from your experience, how important is it really to optimize your website? And do you think that people give optimization, enough effort, and they put enough effort into it, considering how valuable and important it is?
Yeah, I'd say, okay, so that's an interesting question. So I would say, okay, so answer the second bit first. some people put too much emphasis on site speed optimization. So certainly it is a part of online marketing, and a fast loading website is important, but there is a point at which there are other things that are equally as important or even more important. So I wouldn't say that I wouldn't stand here. I'm the guy who's selling site speed stuff, and I wouldn't say it is the most important thing and you must, like, it's, you know, over everything, it's the most important. I'd probably say from an SEO perspective, maybe it's one of the top 10 or top 20 things you should pay attention to, but certainly there's other things that would be equally important. What a lot of people don't understand about site speed is that there's a few different ways that site speed affects SEO and rankings in general. So certainly everyone's familiar now, you know, most people listening to this are going to be tech savvy or in the web space in some way and form, and they'll be familiar or they've heard of Google's Core Web Vitals update. But even prior to that, speed affected SEO in a few different ways, and probably the number one most important way, or probably the biggest impact, or the factor that has the biggest impact, is website reliability. So no one really ever thinks about this, but if the website has downtime or it's offline, that's zero speed. So Core Web Vital stuff aside and everything else, having a reliable website that doesn't go offline, or doesn't go offline when it has a bunch of users on there at once or start throwing errors, is probably it's not even a site speed issue really. Site speed is kind of a symptom of unreliable, like a slow website is a symptom of unreliable hosting. So it's not really speed directly, but it is related to it. So and probably is from an SEO perspective, online marketing perspective, reliability is probably a top 3 or top 5 ranking, or, ranking factor or most important factor, because if it's offline, then you're screwed. Google can't see it, can't index it. Users are getting errors, and it's worse than having a fast website. Having a website that's more stable but slower is better than a fast website that's offline some of the time. So a lot of people don't really understand the full holistic picture when it comes to site speed. And an actionable takeaway, someone listening to this is like, okay, that makes sense. Probably a simple actionable takeaway or action item they can take is to get uptime monitoring in place. So we recommend uptimerobot.com, and it has a free plan, so there's no excuse not to do it. The free plan monitors the website in 5-minute intervals, and that will pick up short outages. So I would say for anyone listening to this, if you're interested in the site speed component of this discussion, get uptime monitoring in place. And so they have a paid plan as well that is super cheap anyway, and it monitors on 1-minute intervals. So that'll pick up reliability issues, and if the site's throwing up errors under load or when Google's indexing it. So I think that answers your question. That's my long rambly answer. I think site speed is important. Some people put way too much emphasis on it. Some people don't really understand how it works in a kind of a holistic way. Probably one other comment I'd make is that a lot of people, when they're testing site speed, they test the homepage only, but in reality, all pages matter. So people are going to inner pages. Google's looking at all the pages on the website. So in our speed optimization work, when we first started, we'd only look at the homepage or a couple of pages, but now we look at all pages, and particularly in Google's Core Web Vitals world, it looks at all pages as well. So there's that's kind of my long answer there, and a couple of takeaways there as well.
I mean, no, having a long answer is pretty good, because you give people who are watching actionable information that they can benefit out of. So thank you so much for that answer. That's pretty good.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, it kind of frustrates me because I'm like, this is so obvious. And for people we see people who are on bad hosts, I'm like, you understand that it's not the speed that's your number one issue here. Reliability is going to be a bigger problem. So the uptime monitoring it's free. It is free at the base level. So there's really no excuse not to have it.
Yeah, I had one more question. So do you have different customers where you give them different advice depending on their business nature? So let's say somebody who is an SEO agency might have a different need for speed optimization than an online shop, for example.
Sure. Yeah, it depends. Some people just have a slow website and they want it not to be slow. We'll have small business owners and it's slow. It's noticeably takes 5 or 10 seconds to load a page. I just want it to be faster than it is now. So we have that. SEO agencies typically want Core Web Vitals now, so they want to pass the Core Web Vitals test, because their issue is their customer sees all these errors in Google Search Console, which is not good for them. something like a WooCommerce site, like some of the issues there on bigger WooCommerce sites, are more like slow checkout pages, slow adding to cart. They're a bit more technical. They're a bit more underneath the bonnet. So they're things like looking at the hosting, looking at how the database is set up and things like that. So yeah, it really depends on what the goals are. And some people just want advice that goes along with the speed stuff. Like they know the website's slow, but they want a bit more kind of a holistic picture of what they need to do to fix it and keep it fixed moving forward. So yeah, it really depends on what the goals are of the customer and what they come to us for. But those are probably the things that the buckets they'd fall into, I think.
Perfect. Okay, now let's move on to SPP, since we've been a customer for about 2 years now. Can you tell me a little bit how you stumbled over SPP and how it has evolved over the last 2 years?
Yeah. So I think before, I can't even remember. Okay, yeah. So we started off with I think probably half the SPP customers probably started with a Gravity form checkout or something like that. So we initially had Gravity forms, and then I think we had an onboarding form. I can't even remember how it was set up, but it would make a ticket in our Zendesk anyway, and then our guys would work from there. The Gravity forms, Zapier, Zap, and all this stuff would break all the time. So then we moved from Gravity forms to Thrivecart, which was a bit better, but that still broke. So just Googling around, I can't remember at the time, but just stumbled across SPP, and it was like the perfect, I mean, it's pitched at our type of business, productized service. And I'd had a look at some other solutions on the market that they were, and Zendesk could do some of the things we needed to do with some of like the onboarding forms and SPP, but not great. So it kind of like the combination of the checkout and the onboarding and just the flow made sense and kind of matched what we were looking to do. So that's how we came across it. And it's been great. So yeah, maybe it's even more than 2 years, I think. But yeah, it's been really good. And certainly the product has evolved a lot over that time. One thing that we really love is we send feature requests all the time, and it's quite refreshing not to get an email back saying, thanks, we'll put that on the list. It's actually like you guys roll out changes once a month, I think. And like often you'll see your feature request on the change, which is really good. And sometimes they're like little things, but they're super annoying that you're just like, I wish I could do this. And you send a feature request and you guys do it. So it's been really good. So we're really happy with the product.
Thank you. Yeah, the feature request thing is really interesting because when we take a look at feature requests, we need to keep in mind that we don't want to add too many new features that not everyone can benefit from. Because sometimes for you, this feature is super important, but you are maybe 1.01% of all the clients who need it. So if it's a big feature request, we need to take into account all the other accounts. For small things, we might be able to just do it in a few days or weeks and help you out. But usually we try to come up with some kind of workaround so you don't have to wait around or have any issues with your business. So that's our approach.
Yep. No, it's good. A lot of the things I think have been like views and just some of the ways of showing data and orders and things like that are just like, hey, it would be great if we could show it in this way. So things like that have been really useful. So, and we use the support quite a bit to ask lots of weird and wonderful questions. So yeah, but it's been great. You guys have been great.
Awesome. That's really great to hear. As a segue into that, I wanted to ask, how has SPP actually improved with your business efficiency overall? And what do you think are the best features that we have that have helped you, make your flow a bit easier?
Definitely Zapier integration. So that's made things a lot easier. So we have order comes in. So I know it's because some of the people listening might not be that familiar. So order comes in, the customer fills out an onboarding form. And then from that, we have a bunch of zaps that do different things. They'll make Google Sheets. They'll set up reports. They'll take screenshots of the customer's website, run speed tests automatically. So that's definitely been probably the feature that makes the most difference, I guess. There's been lots of like little interface changes that have been really useful as well. But yeah, I would say the Zap integration, just being able to push data backwards and forwards and do things once the customer has filled out stuff, that's been super useful. So I also really like the checkout. One thing that I do all the time is look at other SPP users, and I'm like, how are they doing that? Like, look at the weird ways they're doing stuff, and copy a lot of what some of them are doing. So it's been like interesting because it's kind of it in a way it's like a bit of a blank canvas that you're going like, this is a great tool. What are the weird ways we can use this? Particularly like there's a lot of people who offer, they're not similar services, but they're productized services that, they're structured in a similar way. So yeah, it's been interesting. There's a few SPP users I look at regularly to see what new things they're doing. So yeah, particularly like checkout stuff. So that's always interesting. So checkout layouts and onboarding forms and stuff like that. I've actually bought services just to see what would happen when I bought it from some of these guys. So I'm like, well, how do they do it? I'm like, well, it was like some simple keyword research thing or something for $50. I'm like, okay, well, let's just buy it and see what happens.
That's actually pretty cool to hear. You were talking about Zapier and automating a lot of your process. I actually find that Zapier is a super powerful tool, but people usually struggle with getting it set up. Maybe you have any tips on how to make Zapier a little bit easier for people to set up, because it seems to be a nightmare for most people.
Well, it is. Well, I think some of our zaps are like 15 steps long or 20 steps long. And when they break, it takes forever to figure out where they're broken. I don't really have a like documenting how you set up the zap is probably a good way, because I think so. When someone orders a speed service, I think the zap is like 16 steps right now because it runs speed tests. It puts the sale inside our zero accounting system and does a whole bunch of stuff like that. So I'd say documenting it, just some rough notes to explain how it works, it's probably a good idea. Otherwise, when you need to change it or it breaks for whatever reason, it's like an hour to figure out how you've set it up in the first place. So yeah, Zapier is good. I think it actually has some notes features now, which it never used to, where you can actually add the notes inside Zapier itself, so you understand what you've done. But yeah.
Perfect. So looking at your website, you have like services that range between $250 and up to $1,000 per month. How have you managed to find a lot of success pricing your service really fairly? Because there are a lot of productized services now that are trying to go in a different direction, like in a really low priced service. And yeah, they usually outsource their services and try to fight the existing service providers basically on price instead of quality or something new.
Yeah. So those right now, those aren't monthly prices. They're just one-offs. But the prices are going up. So we're moving the opposite direction. And I think there's a lot of services, productized services in general, that once they're established and mature, a lot of them actually move up and they start charging more. And I guess there's two directions you can go with productized services: cheap and the lower end, or more expensive and more quality. And with things for us like Core Web Vitals Update, where like when we first started, the service was $79 and it was like super simple. It would take maybe an hour to do and everybody was happy. People were stoked. And now it can take, days worth of developer time to do a single job. So it's changed a lot. So we're actually, and the other thing is people come to us for speed, but what they really want is SEO most of the time. So we've actually come full circle now, and we're going to start offering SEO services that we offer in our agency now to WP Speedfix customers. So it's certainly, the business has evolved a couple of times. Like, charging $79 for a speed optimization today would be crazy. And there are some people in our market. There's one guy who charges $49 for a speed optimization. I don't know how he makes any money, and he advertises in Google Ads as well. So I guess it just depends on the structure and how you structure the service and the market you're after. But certainly our market has evolved a lot, and people seem happy to pay. Well, maybe it's just more people online who, they have more highly monetized websites that they're happy to pay for good quality services. So I think the market has shifted a lot in general. So I guess like some of these websites, 10 years ago, they'd be a guy who's like a digital nomad running an SEO affiliate site or something. And now it's like, a multi-million-dollar brand or something like that running on WooCommerce. So for us, prices are going up, we're offering a broader range of services, and probably to a bit of a different market than when we first started.
Perfect. So one more thing I noticed on your website is that you don't have like a buy button in this pricing table. So this is a little bit different from other companies because they allow you to buy directly. But I think you did a cool thing that you actually click on learn more and then lead them to a landing page where you have a lot of information about the service. So it doesn't get confusing and there's like, no, okay, you didn't tell me this before I checked out, because you have everything on the landing page. Was this different before, or has it always been like this?
It has always been like that in the way. I have the designs I was just looking at before. So we're changing that pricing table a little bit to even be less of a pricing table because the services have changed and to add the new SEO services. So we've always done it like that. And when we first started, people would just come to the website and buy it. But now most people, there's an inquiry box at the top of the page. So I'd say probably 90% of people send an email first and ask questions, and then they'll purchase. So it's like when it started, it was kind of like the dream. You'd make sales in your sleep kind of thing. But now it's much more consulting heavy and a lot more back and forth than it was. And that's fair enough. Like, I mean, the web is more complicated than your speed is more complicated than it was when we started. So yeah. So more and more we're moving away from the click a buy button and more to the talk to us first, and we'll tell you if we can help you and how we can help you.
Awesome. I'm looking here at my notes and I see that you've mentioned previously that you wanted to move away from MailChimp and ActiveCampaign. You said you wanted to use a service called bentonow.com. I'm wondering if you've managed to set up the SPP API to use that, or have you not gotten around to that yet?
We actually don't use the API, so we're in the process. So Jesse at Bento is so the guys at Bento now have a managed service. So that was a few months ago. We asked about that and we did nothing about it. But they have a managed service now. So I think I actually was talking to Jesse today. So they're pretty much finished setting us up. So they can integrate without the API. So that's actually been quite good. So we had ActiveCampaign. And the deliverability was pretty horrible. So a lot of our emails were hitting the spam box. We actually use them for email and CRM, and the sales. So from the CRM, our responses to sales inquiries would almost always get flagged as spam. So that wasn't good. But we have a few different websites. So we have a speed test tool as well. And we have our agency website. So customers are coming from a lot of different sources. So Bento allows us to track that as well. So we can actually see the customer path. So if they've gone and tested their website and what piece of content they've found us from and all that sort of jazz. So it's not just email marketing. We kind of get a much better picture of what the customer's done and how they've bounced around. And also just we have a new email sequence that's going out as well. So just doing a few things like that. But yeah, we didn't even need to use the API, so they can integrate over the top and pull the information out of the checkout and out of sign-up forms and contact forms and things like that, just with their JavaScript snippet. They had to do a little bit of custom work to do it, but yes, yeah, and it was good. So their managed service means we don't have to do it. So because we would never get around to it otherwise.
That's really awesome. Glad to see that you've managed to get what you were looking for with them. That's pretty good.
Yeah. No, it's great. It's a great tool, and it's really useful to see some of that customer journey stuff because it gives us a much better picture. Because for some people, spending $1,000 on a web service isn't necessarily cheap. So it's good to understand the path people are taking and the problems they're trying to solve and understand what they're doing. Because content marketing plays a big part of what we do as well. So we have a lot of content about site speed stuff. So yeah.
Okay, perfect. So I think another thing you mentioned in one of your tickets was that the maintenance and monitoring service you have set up is getting more and more popular. So not just the one-time service of optimizing websites, but also it's actually keeping track of everything that goes on. How is that working for you? And I think you are using our task features just to keep track of what you have to do.
It's good. We're actually going to change the way we're selling that. We're not actually using the task feature. We use process tree a lot. So that's one of the things that Zapier does is create a whole bunch of process tree checklists. So certainly the subscription module and the setup is really useful to be able to sell that. But yeah, we haven't really dug because we have like the process street stuff already set up and it's pretty comprehensive. We haven't really had a need for the task stuff. So yeah.
Well, I'm gonna chime in then with the next question. What challenges are you experiencing now with your business and the field that you're in, and what are you trying to overcome with them? How are you approaching them? Anything of the sort?
Yeah, I mean, we've kind of solved the problem, but I mean, the expanding the business, offering the SEO services is kind of like it was something that we spent a year kind of hesitating on, but it's pretty clear that people want that. So they want speed because they want SEO. So it kind of makes sense that we give them that option. So the two services we're going to add, one is an SEO audit where we'll do audit and analysis and give them detailed recommendations. So they can either have, and the next step would be the implementation bit. So we can implement it or their existing team can implement it. So that's a challenge we've had expanding the business beyond speed, because speed is, it's a one and done. You do speed, and certainly there's some maintenance stuff to keep the website fast or check it every month. But once the work's done, it's like a small project. So that's one compared to other productized services that I know you guys that are on SPP where they have a easy kind of monthly recurring setup. That's been one challenge for us. So offering some of those SEO services seems to be a natural way to solve that. But just being able to offer those without, SEO has become a bit of an art or somewhat of an art form these days. So to be able to offer the technical part of SEO without so much of the thinking work or the art form bit of it that's different for every customer, and also some of that link building stuff, that's been a challenge to work that out. But I think we have a solution for that. So it's definitely a problem for us, but I think we have the solution. We just need to finish implementing it. So yeah.
All right, well, I guess that's pretty much it then. Thank you so
Awesome.
much for your time, Brendan. We really
Good
appreciate
talking,
it.
boys.
And thank you for joining us.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. It's been great. Good chatting.
Awesome.
Thank you so much. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.